It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. All right, today we've got Elad Barak. He is the CEO of Voyager. We did a pitch deck review recently about his precise cannabis dosing device. Wanted to bring him back on to clarify some things. As investors look at the deck, they look at it very quickly. They don't look at it in depth, and sometimes things can go awry. Mistakes or miscommunications can happen as investors look at these decks very quickly. So Elad has agreed to come on and tell us where we went wrong. It's a learning experience for everybody. The deck in an ideal world would be able to explain everything, and in an ideal world an investor would read it slow enough to comprehend all of that, but it is not an ideal world, which is why we're having this podcast to kind of go over that. So Elad, appreciate your patience, appreciate you being with us.
Absolutely, and I agree completely with what you just said. We need to develop this pitch deck so when you read it, it's self-explanatory, and there was a few places where that did not happen, and we actually already did some changes. But there's also a few places where, as you mentioned, you need the founder to pitch, and they think the more visionary the startup, the more that's needed. And as we're not a cannabis company that's just duplicating what the rest are doing, which is growing cannabis in a specific locations, there's more to it. There's a lot of vision, and I think having one of our team members pitching it is a very important component of it.
Mm-hmm. So on the deck, if you were one of the folks that did see it, there were some things we got incorrect, like the sizing. It looked chunky. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into how Katrina and I thought we saw comps, or comparable devices. We'll get into the list of what we thought were comps, and then you're going to tell us why we were wrong. You got a couple of other things you want to start with, so I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, I think that what you just mentioned is something that was also important for me. As much as we know, there is no existing product on the market, and also no other companies that actually has something in development that is doing what we're doing. And we speak with a lot of CEOs of the big cannabis companies across North America, both in Canada and in the States, and the VPs of innovation. Nobody's ever seen anything like that, right? So it was a bit surprising. Now, I won't be surprised if there's other companies that say, hey, we want to do this, but I don't think that there are any that are developed, as where we are today. And yeah, there's a few other things, but we'll dive into that through the presentation, because there was even a question, why are we developing in it and not, pharmaceuticals? But, that's why you have startups and innovation, right? So small companies can come and bring those, those white spaces that the big companies are missing. So I think there's a very interesting point that you mentioned on slide number 5. I'm not sure it's too much on the slide itself specifically, but you were talking about the fact that dosing is a hot topic of 2019. And I just wanted to mention, I completely agree. It was a very hot topic of 2019. Everybody mentioned it. The challenge is that nobody really solved it. And we continued on because nobody knew how to solve it. And there's a solution here today. And we can't just assume that, nobody solved it, so it's okay. So I wanted to start with that, but then we can go maybe to the sizing, where you spoke about in slide number 6, you were mentioning the size of our product because of those pictures. I think the ones you exactly have right now. Okay. And the one I want to mention, the person in the picture is doing like this. This is not a big product. But I do have a slide here, if you can maybe share my screen, that shows the size, and we can kind of review it. So this is the design we're going with right now. I think it's the first time we're actually revealing it. It's a new design. The pod here slides completely inside the dispenser, and it has a nice screen, as you can see. But the size, which is more important, height 4.9 inches, and the wide is 2.6, and that is smaller from most cell phones that anybody has. So it will fit into your pocket from the shape perspective. On the thickness, it is a bit more thicker than your average phone. But having said that, most phones will have a cover and maybe even something for a card or two. And that is already almost as thick as our product. So it is very small. I put it in my pocket all the time when I walk around just to see how it feels. And it's, it fits great. It's very comfortable to take with you. And the last thing I would mention is we actually need to take liquid with us. And we're taking 20 milliliters of liquid. 20 milliliters liquid, it takes some space, and all you're doing is flattening it, so it will be much more convenient than your average bottle. But we can't compress it, right? The size is the size. So if you want to take a 20 milliliter competing bottle, it will have a fairly similar size in the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So it's about an inch shorter and an inch more narrow, maybe a little bit thicker, but pretty close to modern cell phones. So not as big and clunky as we thought it was when we originally reviewed it.
This is a pod that I'm using for testing right now. It doesn't have the dispenser. This slides inside the dispenser, right? But this is my phone. Like, this is small. The pod is 8 centimeters, right? Sorry, I do centimeters, not inches. But the pod is like 2/3 of height of the dispenser.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a small product. And I think maybe what's important to mention here is my background is system engineering. And when we started this product and we were talking with investors 2 years ago, we were telling them we have the requirements done. And they told us, like, requirements, develop the product. And we tried to explain requirements is the most important thing. As a system engineer, that's my Bible. And requirements are not only we want to dispense this accurate, it's we want this product to be available for all consumers. So you need to go and say, what does that mean? That means the price and the size need to be the right, the correct format. So that was something we put into, focus from the beginning. How do we make sure this is very small? How do you make sure that this is affordable? It's part of the requirements we kind of put into this. So I think you mentioned here something about the fact that you believe that beverages will really explode once cannabis is legal across the states, and that you thought was one of our biggest advantages at this point. I just wanted to mention that, the big guys today that sell beverages across the United States, like Coca-Cola, they have multiple co-packing stations. They don't do all their bottles in one place and then ship water across the nation. So I just, I would challenge that a bit. And then the other thing is our product is just way more affordable for consumers. So we will sell, a beverage from the consumer's perspective for about 80% discount of the price, just because we don't need all of those other components in shipping. So the consumer gets a much more affordable product.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on a conference yesterday with the Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference, and they had a little survey that they were asking their viewers, what is going to be the long-term most popular product? And edibles was number one. Beverages was number two. Flower was number three, and concentrate was even lower than that. So I was kind of surprised by the consumer's opinion about what was going to be long-term. And it was, yeah.
Can I challenge that? Can we put my screen on for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I just published this on my LinkedIn a few days ago. This is from BDSA, and I'll take a moment to read it, and then we can talk about it. But what BDSA is saying, when we talk to consumers about why they're choosing edible products to begin with, including beverages, the ability to control doses is a really big component to that. And so having products that allow the consumers more ability to control those types of measures are really interesting. I think this is a brilliant insight from one of the main companies that knows how to collect data and actually dive into it. The only challenge is that all these big CEOs and the ones that were actually talking in Benzinga and probably filling those surveys yesterday, they don't know about our solution yet, or they don't understand how it works. So they're going to what they're familiar with, which is, I'll just put it in a can, in a bottle, in a gummy. How many gummies do you eat on a daily basis that don't have cannabis? Mm-hmm. I claim that it's a misunderstanding of the industry. In the end of the day, you want to consume cannabis. And I want to add another, another quote that you mentioned, which is, you said, hey, I don't buy edibles because I want to take a bigger dose. Mm-hmm. So they're not manufacturing the right product for you. If they want, they need to manufacture another SKU, a SKU for John, for Josh Kincaid. Now they need SKUs for everyone. It's about selling cannabinoids. It's not about selling an edible. If they think that they're going to make the best flavored beverage and that's why they're going to win, I'm sorry, Coca-Cola did that already. Pepsi did that, right? I'm not competing there. And I don't think they're competing, because when those companies come in, they'll win with the branding. They're just trying to give an accurate dose. And what happens, if you buy that beverage and you need to drink 10 cans to get high, how much do you need to go to the washroom afterwards? It makes no sense. It honestly doesn't. So this slide is beautiful. I think it clearly states what consumers are looking for. And this goes to what I said in the beginning. We're a visionary company. When somebody came in the beginning and said, hey, I want to create Uber, let people drive with other people, I'm sure a lot of investors challenged them and said, you're going to go into somebody else's car? I don't think so. But hey, $50 billion a few years afterwards. So I'm not saying we're Uber, but I'm saying there's some vision required here to understand that there's more solutions than the existing ones in the market. Our dispensers are going to be sold for $20. And then the pods themselves, Katrina asked, well, if you have the pump in each one, I wonder about the cost. So actually what we did is we found another technology and we converted it into a dosing mechanism. And it's a very low cost component that we did some conversion in it. And by utilizing our electronics, which is what you have in the dispenser, one-time purchase, that's the drawing on the left. That's our electronics. We developed it from zero in-house. That's where the cost is instead of on the pumping mechanism itself. So it actually is a very, very low-cost product to manufacture. And you see that afterwards in the picture. The other thing is you mentioned that you really like data collection. I absolutely agree. It's big. It's one of the main places that we are going to shine in. And Katrina asked if RFID is a risk, and the answer is no. RFID is a very close contact to read, and it only manages the information, which is operational, meaning I don't register you consumed 100 milligrams in the RFID. I use the RFID to allow the pod to have a conversation with the dispenser to say, if you want to dispense 100 milligrams, this is what you need to do from an electronics perspective, so I will comply. So there's some communication there between the products, but it's not for them to kind of register your usage and then maybe give it to somebody else. So the RFID is completely safe from that perspective. We're asked a lot of times about our competition, and I think competition is a very wide thing. Competition is not only a product that allows consumers to dispense and dose cannabis the way we do. Yes, that's a direct competition, and I think Curaleaf is a fairly direct competition from that perspective. And that's why we mention it afterwards, and we can talk about that as well. But what we wanted to show here is how people are using cannabis, and we divided it into three main groups. If you have it in a bottle, you're using a syringe or a dropper or any of those weird approaches, which may make you think that you're dosing accurately. But Josh, you are not dosing accurately with those devices. You're gambling on the amount you're taking, and that's why your experience is never repeatable. You can take a pill, a soft gel, any of those. Essentially what they're doing is they're dosing the product for you. You're paying some more money, but you're not flexible. You're not really getting what you want. You're getting 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams or 15. You can't take that 6 milligrams if you want. And last but not least, we have edibles and beverages, which are kind of like pills from that perspective. Just they give you a fuel shebang around it that maybe you don't want. Maybe you don't want the sugars. Maybe you don't want the weight, the extra cash. And we just wanted to show, look, when in the end of the day, as a cannabis consumer, you want to consume cannabinoids, this is how you use it. You take our product. We do not touch the product inside it. So you can take a formulation that is water soluble and mix it in your own beverage. We did not intend for you to take and dispense it into a capsule and close the capsule and then swallow the capsule. That makes no sense. But this is your competition, and you kind of need to decide, do I want to buy an edible 10 times the price just to whatever? Do I want to buy a capsule and feel very medical about it, or a syringe and do it in front of people and feel very awkward? When I can have something very discreet, I take out of my pocket, I press a button, it's my dose, it's accurate. And if somebody asks me about it, I have an iPhone product here in my hand that I can share, So that's kind of where the slide came from. And I thought it was viewed wrong.
Yeah, generally when investors look at a deck, they want to see brands, I guess, more than methods of competition. Yeah. So I think that's what maybe threw her off, and definitely not understanding the product as a liquid dispenser, a ready to drink device. That's why other brands were kind of thrown in there. So whether it was an inhaler or flower or oil, there's several of these that are claiming to be accurate dosing for vape or oil or flower, but none of them happen to be exactly like what you're doing. That is portable. There's tabletops that are claiming to be precise, but nothing that's portable.
I think you're talking about another company called Oplan. We can maybe dive into them afterwards, but they're doing something completely different. We're sometimes confused with them, but they're trying to kind of allow people to do a blend of 30 different cannabinoids and terpenes, personally for them, in a real big bottle. but then you need to still dispense that to the consumer. So it's a very different product, and I have a lot of reasons why I think that there's challenges with that company, but it's very different from what we're doing. It's not comparable in any way, shape, or form. And they use inkjet kind of technology, as much as I know, which, while is accurate, is very, very slow. We developed something that's very fast. We can dispense liquid out. On the account that maybe they're more accurate, but it's a very different clunky device compared to ours. It's a tabletop.
Right. The Levo and the O-Blend, those similar devices.
Yeah, Levo just creates oil from dry leaf. Levo is one of our advisory boards. And you were asking on the pitch, is Levo doing good? And the answer is Levo is doing great. Levo is selling by the millions. Like in Canada, not in quantity. I don't know in quantity. I think she developed an amazing company, and she's selling a lot of product, especially during COVID. People bought it to make their own oil at home. From my perspective, if there's enough people buying a product to make their own oil at home, there's going to be way more people buying a product to make their own beverage at home. You know, what we try to put here is companies that are moving into make your own drink, which we believe is what we're trying to say. You know, we've been saying for almost 2 years now, ready to drink is wrong. And then in cannabis, it's going to be ready to make your own drink, because that's the most convenient form that really allows you to both enjoy cannabis, but not pay any other price and have it very dosable, which again, I think already showed why we believe it's important, and we're not the only ones. And I think it took a lot of companies time, but there is movement. And because a lot of these products are considered concentrates, they're not always reviewed correctly, even from the perspective of the data companies. But there's a bunch of companies here that decided, hey, we're not going to do a ready to drink. We're going to go with other opportunities. And Cureleaf is one of them. And they did a huge market launch with Select Squeeze. Select Squeeze is, you know, a great product, but it's not as sophisticated as ours. It gives you 1 milliliter drop that is equal to exactly 5 milligrams. So you have 30 milliliters in this product with 30 drops, that's all. If I would have a 30 milliliter reservoir, I would be able to put 900 drops into that, not 150 drops. And in those drops, I would be able to give you 1 milligram intervals, not 5. So it's just substantially more developed, more accurate, and you can track everything, and you can switch and have your own pods, right? So there's much more to it, but they just solidified the market need. And they could have gone with a syringe. There's no regulations in the States. They chose to do something proprietary. So that's where we took that. And the data in the bottom is not our product. It's from Headset. And what's interesting is majority of beverages are above 100 milligrams. And Josh, most people are not 100 milligrams consumers. These beverages come with a dosing cap where you're supposed to pour a bit and dose your milligrams. Mm-hmm. Most people will dose their beverage. It's a very inaccurate method. And that's what we're trying to solve. We're saying, look, it's going to be 80% of the market, not even 60. But they need a better product, and that's what's going to allow it to explode. That's the vision we're putting in. We're saying now it's this percent of the market, it's going to be this percent, while you actually have the right tools.
Yeah, I think there's multiple factors involved with that. You can reduce packaging by not having to have a 5 milligram or 50 milligram. You just sell like the concentrated version for you to put it in your own product. So it's going to reduce the costs, I think, for consumers and increase the viability. Because I'm not going to buy a 5 milligram or even 100 milligram beverage. So having something like this where I could dose it myself, it's still grab and go, because I could have my coffee with me or my beverage with me, and then I go to the store, I buy that, and it's the equivalent of a grab and go where I don't have to have a Keurig, which, by the way, Keurig is not real coffee.
So and you know, the interesting part about it that maybe we're missing, and I want to just bring it to the front again, is if you take the Select Squeeze and you want 100 milligrams, you need to press it 20 times. Press, pour, press, pour. Not only it's annoying, you need to count till 20. I love math, but I don't want to count till 20, right? Like, that's not fun. In our product, it's very different. And a lot of times when people ask me, is your product for, what's your, potential consumer? I tell them, like, it's wide. I'm thinking like a manufacturer of an iPhone, of a Galaxy that has everybody using it. If you want to take 1 milligram, you can choose 1 milligram on a product. But if you're a 100 milligram consumer, you can use with the buttons one time to press 100 milligrams, save that dose, and every time you want, you press one time a button, and you'll get 100 milligrams. Why do you need to work hard for it? Why do you need to count it? And if you're in Canada, for example, I can actually limit you to 10 milligrams. And, that's the regulation, unfortunately, so I have to do that. But in that case, you can just press 10 times. That's completely compliant with regulations. Mm-hmm. And it's still much easier than pressing 100 times.
Yeah, that is better.
Yeah. So we think, as I mentioned here on the slide, the fact that Curaleaf has a product doesn't mean we can't join right now and that's it, competition is over. Again, that's a very deterministic way to look at it that I think is very pessimistic. I'm a founder. I'm very optimistic. Bring it on. They're the big guys. We're the small ones. That's okay. They can either purchase us or see how we go and work with their competitors and take the market to a much more sophisticated product. The pressure is on everybody right now, both from them and other companies. And that's our opportunity, not a risk for us. But again, that's why probably I have a startup and I don't invest money in other people. I do the work myself.
What about the constructive feedback that we had on the difficulty with proprietary units and getting those filled and distributed? Because the O blend has had an issue for the last 3 years on doing that.
Absolutely. Without diving too much into O blend, and I don't know them perfectly, I know enough about them, I think, to talk a bit. O blend is trying to do personalization and customization upstream. So they're saying, hey, you as a consumer will send an email or a message to your favorite licensed producer or MSO or SSO and tell them, I want to get this and this unique formulation, and you'll make it for me. Or a dispensary, where I don't see dispensaries having open products, but okay. And then I'll sell it for one consumer. So I'm going to have a complete SOP written in a licensed producer to make a product for one consumer. From my perspective, and I'm putting my MBA hat here, that's now how it's done. When you want to do personalization, customization, you do it downstream. That's why you have one dispenser, one size fits all. And downstream, I'm saying now, if you want a consumer that's taking 1 milligram, it's good. 5 milligrams, it's good. Or 100 milligrams, it's good. So I don't need to have all this variety. I have one type of pod that I'm selling to all the companies together. It is exactly like 510. 510 had no issue to create, everybody using the same technology. So it's a bit easier. The other part is we don't want to have at all our own pods. So we do want to work with partners. And you were asking, why don't we want to work with partners? We actually absolutely do. We're talking with a few companies. We actually have in Canada 2 licensed producers that already signed an MOU with us. Like all companies today, they want to see the product before they make it a binding agreement, and we're okay with that. We're set for testing, and we will have our first products at our store grade level in just a few weeks.
Is it possible, I don't even know why I'm asking this, but I'm just curious if there's a Swiss Army knife opportunity with, is it possible, or is it just completely outside of the business plan to create a Swiss Army knife where you have your dispenser with a vape pen for oil?
So, some people ask me, well, you'll never do vaping, right? You're against vaping. And I'm telling them, look, we're not against vaping. We're about dosing and doing it accurately. I think that's something that's missing. I'm a medical user. I don't consume 100 milligrams in one time, but I'm a very heavy consumer myself. I use 60 grams of cannabis a month for my medical issues. And dosing is very important. And I developed Excel tables and experience to know how to measure a vape. It's horrible. I don't see us focusing on it right now because I think we have enough on the table. And we see other opportunities for our product outside of cannabis. We're getting a lot of interest from the pharma world. There's so many examples that I can give you that will, if you have small kids and you need to give them Tylenol when they're 10 months old, and you've had to measure that amount and say, am I doing something wrong? And I got to give my kid an overdose. And he's 10 months old. You don't, your baby's 10 months old. You don't want to be wrong even on 1 milligram. That's scary. I can probably sell this product for 3 times the price, and a parent like me will purchase it without thinking twice. We can take this to opioids. Allow the dispenser to block you from dispensing more than once in 4 or 5 hours. So we can help you prevent addiction, let's say after a surgery. We can take this for people with glaucoma that need to put eye drops. We're getting a lot of requests and interest. We're getting requests for, OTC, vitamins. So we see a lot of places where we can take this product before we need to go and develop vapes. It's a very different technology. I think one thing, I wrote it down, is one thing we're very different from a lot of the vape companies that you're familiar with. We have R&D capabilities. We're not just sourcing existing components and putting our brand in it, right? We built this from zero. I have a master's in system engineering. I have a bunch of contractors that I've hired to build this completely ourselves. This is our technology in-house. And I think that's a big difference. So we rather, I think, invested right now in this unique thing rather than vape. But if we need, I think we prove that we have the capabilities to do real R&D, which some of these companies did, not in a bad way. They're doing, I want to talk about it when we talk about exit opportunities. They're not doing R&D. They're just doing, hey, this is technology that exists. I'll bring it, put my brand in, and sell. And that's great. Yeah, and this slide, you actually really liked it all together. You said it gives you good visibility to our costs, and it shows, again, how hard we're working on making this cost very low. I'll just mention, once we have a mold to manufacture this in scale, one mold has a place for 16 cavities of these pods, and I can do 10 runs an hour. So I can manufacture 150,000 pods a week from one mold, or 7.5 million. This is very scalable. This is not growing a plant, right? It's different focus. And then on the right, when you see how much companies are paying for this, you can agree or not, but this is what they're paying. When companies want to buy a 510, which has nothing unique about it, they pay between $2 to $3, depending on the quality they want. If they want to go to a PAX, it's going to raise up because that's a bit more premium. So we're thinking, hey, we put it around 4, and we are getting already comments from companies. They're willing to pay that price because they're getting so much advantage, and they're getting data afterwards that we can collect for them, that they're willing to pay it.
Are these wholesale prices for the format types?
This is for selling other companies. We never touch the plant. I'm never going to sell a pod for $50 that has cannabis inside it. I want to sell this for $4 to one, let's say Curaleaf. Instead of doing select squeeze, they buy these pods from us, they fill it themselves, they put their branding on it. The pod will be their product. The dispenser is our, because there's an ecosystem. And it's actually really good for them because our research shows that the more companies come into our ecosystem, the more valuable it is for you, the consumer, because now you have the choice. And the companies that will join will leave that competition to the ground of the cost of ingredient, which is what's happening with oils right now. You know that for sure as a consumer. Costs are going down all the time because there's not a lot of differentiation. And now by having a unique product, they can actually stop that competition and say, here's the price that we're agreeing on, and sell it.
Yeah, I think the constructive feedback that we had on this was that in Washington State, they triple the price because we don't have a vertically integrated opportunity. So that would be a $12 cost of goods sold to the consumer without any cannabis in it whatsoever.
Go protest in the streets 3 times. I mean, that means you're paying at all your cannabis too much. This is just, doing it again, right? I can't, if that means that a company like Voyager can't be in Washington, I think at the end of the day, that's a loss for the consumers.
A lot of them don't come in Washington. Willie's Private Reserve, Willie Nelson, had to leave Washington because it just wasn't making any sense to him.
Because we're Canadian, we're looking at the American market a lot, but we're Canadian, so obviously we know the Canadian market very well, and we have a lot of connections. And we're speaking with the provincial board. So in Canada, you have a provincial board that buys these products, and we've spoken with the Ontario, the BC, and Alberta, the big 3s, right? They love it because it's safe, it's responsible. This is what they want to bring consumers as the government. So in the end of the day, if Washington is putting this 3 times, they're preventing good products from their consumers. Now, I don't know enough to kind of dive into this, but this is where you as consumers need to kind of shout out that you want a better price.
I'm also curious about the pump inside and if it's refillable, you have to throw it away. Is there a way to reuse it?
Yeah. That's a great question because a lot of investors ask us about the recyclability, which our research shows that while that's important for consumers, that's actually not the main concern. And it's very kind of not counterintuitive, I would say, but people think we're more, polluting, I will say, because it's plastic. But they're forgetting the following. Each pod can contain, in Canada, for example, 1,000 milligrams. If you want to have a beverage of 10 milligrams, I just sold you 100 bottles in one small pod. I saved a lot of plastic. Not only on the cost for the manufacturer, because this is substantially cheaper for the manufacturer at this stage, I'm actually saving a lot of plastic. We can recycle this, but it needs to be sent back to us or collected. It is not refillable, not by the consumer, nor by the partners. That is because this is our business model. We don't make revenue on our dispenser. We sell dispensers for $20, which is our cost. We want to align ourselves with our partners. We want to make this affordable and available to everybody. And the pods is where we have our recurring revenue, right? That's our blades. So nobody can fill it. It needs to be sent back to us.
You're the engineering mastermind. You put the pump inside. Why not put it on the outside to reduce?
Oh, great question. So it started because we started from Canada, and the regulations here require an integrated dispensing mechanism. That's how it's referred to. And it needs to be clear that if there's a THC pod inside and you take it out and you put a CBD one in and you dispense, you never get THC. So I can promise you, Josh, that you can take your THC pod out, put a CBD one in, dispense 100 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, everything in it. If there's no THC, you should not be afraid of going into your car and driving. You'll never have cross-contamination. No liquid ever went into the dispenser. You never need to clean it also, which is great. You never need to worry. We dispense directly from the pod. That is very protectable by the patent also. If you think about an espresso machine or a curing machine, you puncture the pod and it's inside, and there's a bit dirt that you do need to clean. There is a bit cross-contamination. So if you use a caffeine and then a non-caffeine, you may still get a bit. So that's why we did it. It was a big challenge. That was, I would say at least half a year of our R&D in the beginning is how do we do this properly? And we had crazy systems in the beginning that were not as appealing. As I mentioned, we converted another component into a dosing mechanism, and we're controlling it very accurately with electronics. And that's, that's the secret, but it allows us to do so many things, again, in cannabis and outside, and it's actually worth it. And we are below that dollar, so.
Yeah, we didn't understand initially, and like quick, busy investors, they don't sit around and wait for an answer. So we didn't understand why there was a pump on the outside, but that makes absolute sense. I would encourage you to add that to the deck because there's value behind that statement of no cross contamination.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I called you right away after because I said like, hey, I want to put my comments, but I also called my team right away and I told them they didn't understand everything, and that's on us. Absolutely, because we want this to be also self-explanatory, and I think it was a good kind of mirror for us and what somebody understands when we don't present it. So I have no issue with that. I was just a bit worried where you said it's big and that there's competition, and those two things that I felt that were incorrect. The rest, I think, is fair game, and I'm very happy with your comments and and trying to just answer them right now.
You should get not Andre the Giant because he's dead, but you should get somebody who's really big to hold it so it looks.
That's
really
what I said. So I've been there. I worked in Israel in a startup that builds robots, and we had the smallest ground robot that can climb stairs in the world, the smallest format, and it looked huge because we took pictures with Israelis, and Israelis are not as big as Americans compared to our American competitors. And I told my team, like, we need to find like somebody really tall and take a picture with him. And eventually we did that. And suddenly our product, our robot looked really small. And I said the same thing here as a joke, but we just used, somebody from our network as a hand model, right? We didn't really dive into that, but it's a great, it is a good approach. I think the valuation is one that I should answer. And just quickly answer it. So first of all, one thing that I do in this pitch is, first of all, I always focus on the left side and I explain why we're scalable. I think that's more important than the right side. I always say the numbers are numbers and they're predictions, right? I can be right or wrong to either side. I think what's important is we're scalable. We show that in the pitch and in the explanations. We can cross borders. We can take this everywhere. We work with local partners. So as I mentioned, the idea is not for us to do everything ourselves. We want to have these partners. Low setup cost, maybe we don't talk about in the presentation, but we made sure that this is fillable by existing equipment of vape pens. So if you have a vape pen filling machine, you can fill our products. You don't need to do anything. We thought about that from the beginning. It was one of our requirements. But if you don't, it's $50,000 investment. It's very easy. And working with existing existing partners that have already products on the market means we don't need to create the pods with a completely new brand. It's a brand that consumers know. So that's quick organic growth. That means that I sell a pod for $4 instead of $50, but I also have lower marketing expenses than that. So we think there's a lot of thought to that. Moving to the right, I'll focus on the blue lines in the Canadian market. The Canadian market assumes after 3 years, only 6 recreational partners. But when they buy $4 pods over and over and over again, that piles up. And I think we missed the basic math. $130 million divided to 4 is just about 30 million. For North America and a bit of Europe, 30 million pods a year. Is that really too much from a bunch of companies?
I think it's hard to wrap your head around 1 in 3 Americans buying this device for cannabis. However, when I didn't realize you were looking at pharmaceutical as well. And so when you bring in multiple industries, especially big pharma, you're going to smash those numbers.
No, of course. But this is just cannabis, Josh.
I think that's a lot to ask. 1 in 3. You said 30,000 units.
No, I said 30 million, but 30 million pods doesn't mean that 30 million consumers. Josh, you are for sure a 24 pod a year, if not more. For sure. I have no doubt about it. You'll buy multiple pods. You'll buy it. It will be over. Like, you will use it more. This is arm's reach. Now you have cannabis that you can use all the time and mix in any beverage. You're going to start using more, be more accurate, more responsible, but consume probably a lot of pods. You're not going to use a pod a year. 1,000 milligrams, you'll take a year to finish it. You'll finish it in a day and a half, according to what itself. I probably will use 2 pods a month. It really depends on the user. And the interesting part, we didn't talk about it, but when we did our big research and talked about how consumers took our concept, and one of the interesting things is when we asked purchase intent, the more you dive into the amount of consumption, the intent increases. So if you're a monthly consumer, a weekly consumer, or a daily consumer, the daily consumer wants to purchase this much more than the weekly, who wants to purchase it much more than the monthly. Complete correlation there, which is amazing. Meaning heavy users like yourself are actually more inclined to use this product. And, I have a quote here of you that I wanted to read out, where you said, I would spend $350 on the big clunky thing if it meant that it worked all the time, if it's reliable and dependable. The size of it, I would sacrifice having a big dispenser if it means it actually works. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, well, 1, it's going to cost you $20, not $350, your one-time purchase. 2, I hope I convinced you that it's not that big and it will absolutely work for a long, long period, definitely 2 years, which is our commitment. You just need to replace those pods, right? So, I think that with this, asking you back on your quote, would you purchase this? I'm assuming I'm going to hear a yes. And you're going to buy a lot of pods, not 1.
I would probably be more inclined to go to Portland and get it for a fraction of the price than I would in Washington, because again, that $12 just on the cost of goods sold is going to put it out of range for me to be a consistent buyer. But I would definitely buy it maybe quarterly, but I would buy it a hell of a lot more every time I go to Portland.
Yeah, I can't answer that Washington thing. 1, I don't really know about it, right? I can't really answer something I'm not familiar with. I never dived into the Washington, needies and greedies. But I think you get the gist of it, right? Like, this is very much meant for consumers. On our team, we have Aryan, who's a CPG expert with years of experience. We took all that into consideration. When I sat down as a system engineer, I had those consumer requests as my requirements. I had to develop a product that actually does these things. It was very important. So I think we answered a lot of these things, and I get why you want to challenge us in this. That's okay. That's a fair challenge. But we build these numbers from the bottom up. We looked into numbers of stores in Canada and this velocity of sales of other products, and we took lower numbers. And then we just multiplied and said, well, this is what the state's going to be in Europe. And, I have to mention, as an Israeli, every time I hear, and you mentioned it also, will this go to Israel? Israel is such a small market. Everybody thinks it's a huge market. Israel is half of Ontario. 8 million people, most of them conservative, that will not touch cannabis. There's a lot of research being done in Israel, but it's not a big market. People have that wrong for some reason. I've always wanted to say it something.
I think people look at Israel as a gateway, kind of like they thought Canada would be a gateway to Europe and to a market like Germany. I think people think that Israel is a gateway to Europe and the medical cannabis community worldwide.
Well, as an ex-Israeli, I would disagree. The market in Israel is very complicated. As a medical user in Israel, I will have a lot of tough time becoming a cannabis user. I have Crohn's disease, and in order to get cannabis, I need to prove that, regular medication doesn't work on me. Medication for people with Crohn's kills your immunity system. I went off of these things. I'm not willing to touch them again. Cannabis is my refuge to not using those products. And then it's not recreational, right? It's very difficult to get it in Israel. It's not that simple as it is in other places like in Canada. And again, the majority of population is not Tel Aviv. The majority of Israel is actually a very conservative population that does not touch cannabis. And I think it's just reviewed a bit wrong. There's a lot of great research. And I know a bunch of the researcher in Israel spoke with them, front of the line, absolutely. It's just not for the marketing part, but maybe we're going a bit to the side of that, but yeah. I'd love to maybe, if we can go back to talk about this slide, which I think was also, misunderstood a bit. And I just want to dive into it a bit. So first of all, on the left, you see what we're referring to, that we actually have a lot of more verticals that we're going to go eventually. And we actually think we will be able to sell fairly quickly the cannabis arm out and just focus on pharma. But what we wanted to show is look, there's a lot of companies doing purchasing in this industries. If they're big cannabis companies, if they're big CPG, big tobacco, big alcohol. What we've mentioned in the top is, Green Lane Kushco, they just merged, and PAX. And both of these companies, when you look on their pro forma, they're a hardware company. So Kushco has 70% of their revenue coming from selling hardware equipment, vape pens and vape cartridges. Now, that's what I was talking about. This is not a lot of R&D. This is taking product, buying it, selling it, putting a brand for a company out. They're worth for the merged company $340 million, if I'm not mistaken. PAX, I don't know the valuation today. 2 years ago, they were 1.7 billion. They have the same thing. They're selling vape technology. They just put a nice branding around it. They have some R&D. They have some different technology. And that's where we feel we're playing. Just you need to remember that only 30% of population is willing to smoke and vape. 70% isn't. And we're selling hardware equipment. And at the end of the day, you have to put that MBA hat and understand what are we doing as a company. So I think that not only that it's a great comparison, I think if PAX wants to increase their product offering, it will be great for them to purchase us. The fact that, we were challenged that Katerina said, they have their product. Why would they purchase a company like Voyager? Well, they have a vape. Their new vape actually is also a dosing vape. So why not even maybe get something that is, to dose not vaping? It's a complementary product. It's a great fit. And they already know the business model. If you think about Kushco, for example, maybe by having our product, they reach new companies, and now they can sell also their vaping equipment to them because there's a lot of competition in the vaping equipment. So I think that this slide was just misunderstood a bit. Again, there's a part on us on making it better, and I don't want to take that off the table, but I just think that saying that PAX is not a potential acquirer, absolutely. They don't have anything like what we have. And we've done what we've done in $450,000. We've proven that we know how to develop products efficiently.
So with Kraft Heinz, you're saying that they've bought Evolve Ventures. So this isn't going to be something that they use for vanilla, right?
No. We were talking about, these companies have all actually did moves into the cannabis in one way or another. And we're just trying to give examples. We can't put all the companies, obviously, but we just want to mention, look, big cannabis companies, we see them purchasing companies like that. Cureleaf can come and say, we love Select Squeeze. This is a better solution. We want to adopt this and have it only ours. And one of the MSOs that I spoke with, that's the first thing they told me. If we do this, we want to buy you out. We don't want to be a partner. So, if you put enough money, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
It can be a pharma, it can be a tobacco, it could be a beverage company. There's a lot of companies coming in. One of the comments was that the pharmaceutical company there won't purchase us because if they want this, they would do it themselves. And that, ran shivers off my spine. Big companies do not develop products all the time because they're big companies. They don't see everything. They can't move as fast. And for them to develop what I did for $500,000, they'll need to develop it for $10 million. It doesn't work the same. That's why you have all the time small companies developing new technology and then selling it out. So saying that if this is needed, they would do it themselves without us is just absolutely not understanding what a startup is. And I was a bit, of course we can develop something that doesn't exist. That's why you have startups.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where this slide is. So not talking anything about should it be more self-explanatory, maybe, but I think there's big potential of these companies. This slide, you killed us, and I think you're right. I do have a better one that I did, but I don't know if we need to share it, but we put everything much more clear. I think it was a bit confusing. Obviously, these are shares. We don't think we're worth $240 million. We live on Earth. But, I think knowing a lot of other companies and listening to their pitches, and we've been in a few events together, and you saw companies that have vaping technology that is not unique, raise on a higher valuation than us and succeed in it. Mm-hmm. So I think our valuation is completely in line.
I'll throw PAX under the bus and say that their $420 million valuation is a lawsuit waiting to happen because you can't have an arbitrary number like $420 million. Your shareholders will sue you eventually. Allegedly, I'm saying. That's my opinion. I think that they are in a world of trouble.
It could be. I think the one thing we're missing about PAX sometimes is PAX has a small market share today, but they still have, I think, one of the biggest shares that is not 510. And that's maybe a place you want to play in. Now,
speaking of Israel, I also think that their slides are perfect. I've seen the flower cuts that they're using in Israel to put in these thin slides, and that's kind of like what I feel PAX is kind of copying or emulating, is that development that they're having for vape technology and hoping that it gets worldwide.
If you're talking about psych, that's an interesting approach. But I think it's just expensive. Again, the engineering in me loves the technology, but I think it's a bit expensive from my understanding. But what I want to say is that about packs, sometimes people tell me, so will it be packs, will it be 510? And I tell them, look, as long as it's the only one, I'm both. And that's the truth. And it's not so easy to make a 510 here because you have to have communication between the pod and dispenser. Different pods have different viscosity and require different dosing mechanisms, different pulses, right, of electricity. And you can't tap into that without being part of our ecosystem.
Yeah, that whole rant I was going on about, wanting a $350 unit, and I didn't care how much it was going to cost. I said that because I'm so tired of these vape pens not working. It's crazy being 2021 and not having something consistently working. So actually this morning, I just went to Vuber and I bought a Vuber vape pen and they're local, they're made in Seattle. And I went to a local Hedge shop and the local guy was like, I've never heard of Vuber. And I look at his shelf and it's all this foreign made plastic garbage. I'm like, wow, that's too bad. You should really understand their local market. And I just walked out.
Yeah. And again, I think also in oil vape pens, there's a lot of cheap stuff. When you go to the dry leaf, you're getting a bit more high quality sometimes. But the vape pens that are dry leaf, they don't have that repeatability. Their business is selling you a device one time, so they have to sell it for a lot of money. We, on the other hand, our business is to sell you those pods, right? And that's a completely different business model that has been proven much better over time. So that's why you're not filling the pods yourself, but it also allows us to be very accurate in it. So it's also a necessity in a way. Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot. We went over quite a few slides on that deck. Is there anything that that you want to include at this point, either that's in the deck or not?
No, I think we really covered a lot. I want to first of all thank you for the opportunity, because I called you a minute after I saw the pitch and said, okay, I thought I'll be involved, and I really wanted to give a bit of our spirit into this. And I think the one thing that is obviously missing from looking at a pitch like this without the founder is that excitement, that optimism, and that vision. And I think again in our product it's so much needed. And as I showed you that insight from BDSA, that insight is right. The issue is that a lot of the big companies, they just didn't see it yet. And I really believe that we're disrupting here the industry and bringing something new. Our product development is running like crazy fast. So on the electronics, we're completely done. I can manufacture 10,000 if I want. On the pods, we need to raise money so we can do the molds. But we have an aerospace company that invested in us, and they're manufacturing products for us on machining. So it's not in scale, but it's food grade and it's high quality. So I can actually allow you to use it. So it's a matter of a few weeks that we will have a batch of 200 dispensers and pods. And we want to go to MJ Biz, bring a bunch of those, share with our investors, our partners, and just talk with consumers. Because when I talk with consumers, they love this. They can't wait to see it. And I think there's a bit of miscommunication between them and what the companies want to do. So MJ Biz is a great opportunity for us. And I think in general, COVID is a tough one for startups, right?
Yeah.
You need to have in-person meetings. So we're really expecting it. And I want to come to a bunch of US events.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Lift & Co. is going to be happening in November up in Canada. So
yeah, we'll definitely do.
Say what?
Canada will definitely do. And when I already told you that you're on our list to get one of the pods and dispensers as a gift. So you just wait for that. People across the border will get it with a nice small bag that instructs them how to fill it as well, because I want you to be able to use it. And these ones will be refillable just because they're samples. So you'll get
awesome.
Refillable. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. If I can get up to Canada in November, assuming the border's open, hopefully we can see it there. Otherwise, you'll be in Vegas, hopefully in October, just in a few months. So yeah, looking forward to seeing the progress, any upgrades or research and development that you want to share at that point. I'll definitely throw a mic in your face. And
absolutely. No, we'll have the product to show you at that stage. We're working on all the small, fun things. I'm designing a box right now, so when you open it, you see the product. And it's not engineering, but it's fun. We're designing the screen right now, and you know what? It was so missed from the industry. When you want to dispense liquid from our product, let's say you see 10 milligrams, the product tells you you're dispensing 10 milligrams, and you have 20 doses left. If you're going to change that 10 milligrams to 5, it's going to tell you you're dispensing 5 milligrams, and you have 40 doses left. It does all that math for you. You don't need to do any math. You count milligrams at milliliter. I'm seeing the screen, and I already understand how great this product is going to be. And again, that's all the fun part. Like designing the screen that means you're in the last stages. Everything else is working.
If people want to check out your website, get on some waiting list or whatever else, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so absolutely. Voyagerproducts.ca is our website. You can see a bit about what we're doing. There's some information for investors, links to some of our videos, definitely an interview that we did before. And I'm very active on LinkedIn, both the company and myself, so feel free to reach out. We are fundraising currently, already have commitments and converting right now to investments. So I would encourage people that are interested to get in touch sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Great. We will have your link to your LinkedIn account and website in the description in the show notes.
Awesome.
But I think with that, we're going to roll this one up. So I want to thank my guest, Elad Barak. He's CEO of Voyager. Appreciate you being back on the Talking Hedge.
Thanks.
Yep. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.